22 years of loyalty, working late nights and sacrificing weekends. But in one afternoon, I was thrown out of the company like excess baggage. They thought I would go quietly, disappear into nothing. But they forgot that sometimes, the most dangerous thing in an office isn't a lawsuit. It's a secret recording device that captured everything they never wanted the world to hear. My name is Jessica Marlowe, and for 22 years, I gave everything to Asterion Dynamics at 45. I'd spent half my life in that glass tower on Michigan Avenue in Riverton, Illinois, watching the seasons change through the same office window, believing that loyalty meant something. Asterion Dynamics wasn't just any tech company. We developed enterprise management software that powered half the Fortune 500. When I started in 2002, fresh from my MBA, there were only 30 of us. Now, over 2,000 employees filled 6 floors of that sleek building. I'd been there through it all. The dot-com recovery, the 2008 crisis, the pandemic pivot to remote work. I wasn't just an employee, I was institutional memory. My desk sat on the 14th floor, in the corner of the operations department where I managed vendor relations. Not the most glamorous job, but I was good at it. Damn good. I knew every supplier's birthday, their kids' names, their favorite coffee orders. That personal touch saved the company millions in negotiations over the years. My annual reviews were spotless. Exceeds expectations written so many times it became a running joke with my manager. The office had changed dramatically in recent years. Gone were the days of casual Fridays and long lunches where real relationships formed. Now, everything was metrics, KPIs, and synergy. The new CEO, brought in 18 months ago from a Silicon Valley startup, was 32 years old, young enough to be my son. He walked the halls with his AirPods always in, barely making eye contact with anyone over 40. The culture shift was suffocating. Mandatory 70-hour weeks became the unspoken rule. Work-life integration, they called it, which really meant your life became work. I watched younger colleagues burn out and leave, replaced by even younger faces willing to sacrifice everything for stock options that might never materialize. The break room conversations changed from weekend plans to competitive suffering. Who stayed latest? Who answered emails fastest at 2 a.m.? Who canceled more family events for urgent projects? But I adapted. I always adapted. When they introduced the new software systems, I learned them. When they restructured departments for the 3rd time in 5 years, I rolled with it. When my new manager, fresh from Wharton at 28, spoke to me like I was a relic from another era, I bit my tongue and smiled, because that's what professionals do. That's what loyal employees do. My colleagues respected me, even if upper management increasingly didn't. Sarah from accounting always brought me banana bread. Tom from IT fixed my computer issues without filing a ticket. The security guards knew my name, not just my badge number. In a building where everyone was too busy climbing to look sideways, I'd built something rare, genuine connections. The warning signs were there if I'd wanted to see them. The hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The way my invitation to strategic planning meetings mysteriously got lost. The new hires in my department who reported directly to my manager, bypassing me entirely. But after 2 decades, you develop blind spots. You trust that your value is recognized, that dedication means something. How wrong I was. In modern corporate America, loyalty isn't an asset, it's a liability. Experience isn't wisdom, it's expensive overhead. And believing in the company's mission statement about valuing our people above all was perhaps the most naive thing of all. Looking back now, from the ashes of everything that happened, I can see it clearly. Asterion Dynamics was never a family. Despite what the recruiting posters claimed, it was a machine. And I was just a cog that had become too expensive to maintain. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I arrived at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before my official start time, just as I had for 2 decades. The February air in Riverton was bitter cold, but my coffee was hot, and I had 3 vendor meetings lined up that would save the company another $250,000 in contracts. I was reviewing my notes when the Outlook notification popped up. Meeting request, Human Resources Conference Room B, 9 a.m. Required attendees, Jessica Marlowe. No subject line, no agenda. Just those cold corporate words that made my stomach drop. At 9 sharp, I walked into Conference Room B. 3 people sat across from me like a tribunal. HR Director Patricia Nguyen, whom I'd known for 15 years. My manager, Brett Harrison, who couldn't meet my eyes, and a young woman I didn't recognize, furiously typing on a laptop. "Jessica, please sit down," Patricia said, her voice professionally neutral. The same woman who'd celebrated with me at last year's company Christmas party now looked at me like I was a stranger. Brett cleared his throat. "Jessica, as you know, Asterion Dynamics is undergoing strategic restructuring to align with our new market positioning." Those words, that corporate doublespeak that meant nothing and everything. "Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately." The room seemed to tilt. 22 years, and it came down to a single sentence delivered by a man who'd been with the company less than 2 years. "I don't understand," I managed. "My performance reviews—" "This isn't about performance," Patricia interrupted. "The company is moving in a new direction. Your role no longer fits our organizational needs." "What does that even mean?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay professional. "I manage 12 vendor contracts worth $30 million annually. Who's going to—" "Those responsibilities will be redistributed among the team," Brett said, finally looking at me. "We need fresh perspectives, people who understand modern procurement strategies." Fresh perspectives, modern strategies. Code words for younger and cheaper. The unknown woman slid a folder across the table. "This is your separation package. 2 weeks severance, continuation of health benefits through the end of the month, and you'll need to sign this non-disclosure agreement." 2 weeks, after 22 years, I was worth 2 weeks. "That's not even close to standard severance for someone at my tenure," I said, my hands shaking as I opened the folder. "It's what we're offering," Patricia said. "You have until end of business today to review and sign. If you don't sign, you forfeit the severance entirely." The next words destroyed whatever composure I had left. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes, then your badge will be deactivated." "Security?" I stood up, my legs unsteady. "You're having security escort me out like I'm some kind of criminal?" "It's company policy for all terminations," the unknown woman said without looking up from her laptop. The walk to my desk was the longest of my life. Jim from security, who I'd shared coffee with countless mornings, walked beside me in uncomfortable silence. Conversations stopped as we passed. Some colleagues looked away in embarrassment, others stared in shock. 22 years of relationships reduced to awkward glances and hurried looks at computer screens. 15 minutes to pack up a career. My hands moved mechanically, shoving personal items into a cardboard box they'd provided. The photo from the company picnic 5 years ago. My collection of vendor thank you cards. The stress ball shaped like a computer mouse. The placard recognizing my 20th anniversary that now felt like a mockery. "Time's up, Jessica," Jim said softly, genuinely apologetic. As he walked me to the elevator, past the desk where I'd spent thousands of days, past the break room where I'd celebrated birthdays and promotions, past the conference rooms where I'd saved this company millions. I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart or my pride, but my faith in everything I'd believed about hard work and loyalty. The elevator descended in silence. In the lobby, Jim took my badge, the plastic rectangle that had defined my identity for so long. "I'm sorry, Jessica," he whispered. "This isn't right." The February wind hit my face as the glass doors closed behind me. I stood on the sidewalk, holding a pathetic cardboard box, watching through the windows as life inside Asterion Dynamics continued without me. People rushing to meetings, checking phones, living their corporate lives as if a 22-year career hadn't just been erased in 15 minutes. They thought I would go quietly. They thought I would take their insulting severance, sign their papers, and disappear. They had no idea how wrong they were. The cardboard box sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I could bring myself to unpack it. Each item was a reminder of the life that had been ripped away. But when I finally reached the bottom, my fingers touched something I'd completely forgotten about. A silver pen that looked expensive but wasn't. It was actually a digital voice recorder, disguised as a Mont Blanc. A vendor had given it to me 2 years ago as a promotional gift. For those important meetings when you can't take notes fast enough, he'd said with a wink. I'd used it occasionally to record meeting details, vendor negotiations, anything I needed to review later. The device could record 8 hours continuously, activated by a simple click. I stared at it, remembering how I'd clipped it to my portfolio during meetings, clicking it absently, like a nervous habit. How many conversations had it captured? How many times had I forgotten it was even recording? My laptop was gone, company property, but the pen's USB drive didn't need special software. I plugged it into my personal computer and watched as file after file appeared. Dates going back 18 months. My heart raced as I clicked on a random file from last November. Brett's voice filled my kitchen. Patricia, we need to start documenting everything Jessica does wrong. Build a case. These older employees are bleeding us dry with their salaries and benefits. Patricia's response was equally cold. The age discrimination lawsuits are hard to prove if we're careful. Performance improvement plans are the way to go. Set impossible goals, document the failures. I sat frozen, listening to them plan my termination 3 months before it happened. Another file, this one from December, captured something far worse. The CEO's voice, talking to the CFO. The Q4 numbers are shit. We need to move some of next quarter's revenue forward. Just adjust the recognition dates on the Pemberton contract. That's securities fraud. The CFO had responded nervously. That's survival. Do it. File after file revealed a cesspool of corruption I'd been too naive to see. There was Brett, promising a female intern a promotion in exchange for private mentoring sessions at his apartment. The head of sales discussing how to bury a client's data breach to avoid liability. The HR director laughing about denying a colleague's medical leave for cancer treatment because she probably won't be productive anyway. But the most damaging recording was from January, just 2 weeks before my termination. A board meeting I'd been asked to attend briefly to present vendor contracts, but my pen had kept recording after I left. The entire leadership team discussed their plan to cook the books for the upcoming IPO, inflating user numbers and hiding operational losses. They mentioned specific numbers, fake accounts, the works. This wasn't just unethical, it was criminal, potentially worth hundreds of millions in fraudulent valuation. I listened to everything twice, my anger building with each revelation. These were the people who deemed me not aligned with company values. These criminals who destroyed lives while preaching integrity in all-hands meetings. My first instinct was to march into a lawyer's office, but I stopped myself. Legal proceedings would take years, cost everything I had, and Asterian's legal team would bury me in motions and delays. They'd paint me as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge, which I was, but that didn't make what they'd done any less criminal. No, I needed to be smarter. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what 22 years of building relationships could do. I made a list of every contact I had, journalists who'd covered Asterion's previous product launches, former employees who'd been similarly disposed of, current employees who trusted me with their own grievances. My phone still had numbers for 2 members of the board of directors who'd always been skeptical of the new leadership. I had the personal email of an SEC investigator who'd given a presentation at a conference I'd attended last year. But I had to be careful. One wrong move, and they'd know it was me. They could sue me into oblivion, claim I'd illegally recorded confidential information. I needed plausible deniability. That's when I remembered Marcus, a former IT security specialist who'd been fired 6 months ago for budget constraints, really for questioning the CEO's dubious expense reports. He'd left angry and had the technical skills to help me distribute this information anonymously. I also thought about Jennifer from accounting, who'd been demoted after reporting inconsistencies in the books, and David from legal, who'd resigned rather than sign off on questionable contracts. All of us, casualties of Asterian's new direction. As I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of corporate malfeasance that would make Enron blush, I realized something. They'd created their own worst enemy. In their arrogance and greed, they'd forgotten that the people they stepped on had memories, connections, and sometimes, accidentally, recordings of every damning conversation they'd thought was private. The question wasn't whether to use this information. The question was how to deploy it for maximum impact. They'd taken everything from me with surgical precision. I would return the favor with interest. The plan took shape over sleepless nights fueled by coffee and righteous anger. I couldn't just dump everything online and hope for the best. That was amateur hour. This needed to be surgical, coordinated, and impossible to trace back to me. First, I transcribed everything meticulously, creating a detailed index, dates, participants, and specific crimes discussed. Securities fraud went in one folder, sexual harassment in another, age discrimination in a third. Each piece of evidence was labeled and cross-referenced. My dining room became a war room, with printed transcripts organized in color-coded folders. Marcus responded to my carefully worded email within hours. We met at a diner 2 towns over, where truckers and traveling salesmen wouldn't recognize either of us. He looked terrible. 6 months of unemployment had taken its toll. They destroyed my reputation, he said, stirring his coffee absently. Posted on LinkedIn that I was fired for performance issues. No one will hire me. What if we could return the favor? I slid him a USB drive under a napkin. But I need your expertise to do it right. His eyes lit up as I explained. We need to be ghosts. VPNs, anonymous email accounts, timed releases. I can do that. Jennifer was harder to convince. When I called, she was working 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet after being blacklisted in the industry. I can't afford lawyers if this goes wrong, she said. You won't need lawyers. You'll need popcorn to watch the show. I gave her specific instructions. Reach out to her former colleagues still inside, the ones she trusted. Don't say anything explicit, just mention she'd heard something big was coming and they might want to update their resumes. Plant seeds of doubt. Create paranoia. David, the former legal counsel, provided the most valuable insight. Over drinks at his house, he mapped out exactly how to present the information to maximize legal exposure while minimizing our risk. The SEC offers whistleblower protections and rewards, he explained. But you need to submit the right forms, to the right people, in the right order. I still have contacts there. What about the media? I asked. That's phase 2. First, we need official investigations started. Then the media amplifies the pressure. But Jessica. He paused, looking serious. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. Asterian will burn to the ground. Good. The technical preparation took 2 weeks. Marcus created a series of anonymous email accounts, routing them through servers in different countries. We purchased burner phones with cash. I rented a laptop under a fake name from a sketchy computer shop that didn't ask questions. The hardest part was selecting what to release and when. Too much at once would be overwhelming, potentially dismissed as a hoax. Too little wouldn't create enough impact. We needed a cascade effect, each revelation building on the last, giving them no time to recover. Phase 1, the SEC filing. David helped me prepare a comprehensive whistleblower complaint with the most damaging financial fraud evidence. The potential reward, up to 30% of any penalties collected, was just a bonus. I wanted them in federal prison. Phase 2. Selected journalists would receive packages with evidence of the harassment and discrimination. I researched each reporter carefully, their beats, their previous work, their reputation for protecting sources. I chose 3. An investigative journalist at the Tribune known for corporate exposés, a tech blogger who'd been critical of Asterion before, and a financial reporter at the Wall Street Journal. Phase 3, The board of directors would get everything, showing how the leadership they'd hired was destroying their company. Some board members were old school, people who actually cared about fiduciary responsibility. Phase 4. If needed, we'd go nuclear. Full public release of everything on multiple platforms simultaneously. I spent days crafting the anonymous messages that would accompany each package. They needed to be compelling, but not emotional. Factual, but not boring. Marcus ran them through software to analyze writing patterns, making sure they couldn't be traced to my communication style. "You've thought of everything," Marcus said, reviewing our preparation. "But are you ready for what comes next? Your name will probably come out eventually. Whistleblowers always get exposed somehow." I thought about my empty house, my destroyed career, my reputation already in tatters from being escorted out by security. What exactly do I have left to lose? The fear was still there. Late at night, I'd wake up in cold sweats thinking about corporate lawyers descending on me. But stronger than the fear was the rage. They'd discarded me like trash after 22 years. They'd laughed about destroying people's lives. They'd committed crimes while preaching ethics. We set the date, March 15th. The Ides of March seemed appropriately symbolic for bringing down an empire built on lies. Everything was ready. The evidence was packaged, the delivery methods were tested, the contingency plans were in place. We had dead man switches set up. If anything happened to any of us, everything would release automatically. I stood in my war room, looking at the boxes of evidence, the careful plans, the network of allies I'd assembled. David was right. Once this started, there would be no stopping it. They thought they'd silenced me with a pathetic severance check and an NDA. They were about to learn that 22 years of institutional knowledge was worth more than they could have imagined. And that sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one you created yourself. March 10th, 5 days before execution. That's when everything nearly fell apart. I was at the grocery store, trying to maintain some semblance of normal life, when I noticed him, a man in a baseball cap, pretending to study cereal boxes but watching me in the convex security mirror. When I moved to produce, he followed. When I left, a different car tailed me home. My phone rang that evening. Unknown number. "Jessica, it's Brett. We need to talk." My blood froze. "We have nothing to discuss. Everything goes through lawyers." "Come on, Jess. We worked together for 2 years. I know you're angry. But what you're planning, it won't end well for anyone." The fact that he knew I was planning something sent panic through my veins. Had someone betrayed me? Was my phone tapped? "I don't know what you're talking about." "Tomorrow. Noon. The parking garage on 5th Street, level 3. Come alone. Or that severance package disappears, and things get complicated." He hung up. I immediately called Marcus from the burner phone. "They know something," I said. "We need to accelerate the timeline." "No," Marcus said firmly. "That's exactly what they want. Panic leads to mistakes. Stick to the plan." But sleep was impossible. Every car passing my house could be surveillance. Every unknown number could be them. I found myself checking locks obsessively, pulling curtains tighter. The next day, against every instinct screaming danger, I went to the parking garage, not because I was brave, but because I needed to know what they knew. Brett stood next to his Tesla, trying to look casual but sweating despite the March cold. "Thanks for coming." "Talk." "Jennifer from accounting. She mentioned to someone that big changes were coming, that someone told HR. HR called me." He stepped closer. "Jessica, I know you have something. Maybe recordings, maybe documents. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we can make this all go away. Like you made me go away. That was business. This is different. The CEO is prepared to offer you a substantial settlement, 6 months severance, full benefits, and a glowing recommendation. All you have to do is sign a more comprehensive NDA and hand over whatever you have. 6 months, still insulting after 22 years, but they were scared. Good. And if I refuse? Corporate espionage charges, You recorded private conversations without consent. Illinois is a two-party consent state. You could face prison time. I laughed, actually laughed, which clearly wasn't the reaction he expected. Brett, you really should have paid more attention in those compliance meetings. Illinois is a one-party consent state for in-person conversations where one party consents. I was in every one of those meetings. I consented to my own recordings. His face paled. You're lying. Google it. He pulled out his phone, fingers shaking as he typed. The color drained from his face as he read. The offer stands, he said weakly. 6 months? 2 years? What? 2 years full salary. Benefits, and a written apology for age discrimination. Oh, and you resign. Publicly? Citing personal failures. You're insane. No, I'm negotiating. You have 48 hours. I walked away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. But I'd learned something crucial. They were fishing. They suspected I had something but didn't know what. That evening, Marcus confirmed my suspicions. They're monitoring your email and phone, but not the burners. They've got private investigators following you, but they haven't connected me or David to this. Should we abort? Hell no. But we need a distraction. The distraction came from an unexpected source. David called the next day. I just got a job offer from Asterian's biggest competitor. Huge salary, signing bonus, the works. That's not a coincidence. Of course not. They're trying to buy my silence. But here's the thing. I'm going to take it. And in my exit interview with my current employer, I'm going to mention, casually, that I heard Asterian is under federal investigation. Let them chase that ghost while we execute the real plan. Jennifer played her part perfectly, too. She started posting on LinkedIn about toxic corporate cultures and the importance of whistleblower protections. Never mentioning Asterian directly, but clearly enough that people inside started asking questions. The paranoia inside Asterian was becoming palpable. My former colleagues still in touch told me about emergency meetings, document shredding parties, and sudden vacations taken by senior executives. On March 13th, Patricia from HR called me directly. Jessica, please. Whatever you're planning, we can work this out. The company is prepared to be very generous. 2 years' salary, Brett's resignation, written apology. Done. I paused, genuinely surprised. What? We'll agree to your terms. Legal is drafting the paperwork now. But we need your guarantee that whatever you have gets destroyed. They were more terrified than I'd imagined, which meant what I had was even more damaging than I'd thought. Send me the agreement, I'll review it. Jessica, we know you're angry, but think about everyone else who works here, the good people who had nothing to do with your termination. Do you really want to destroy their lives too? The manipulation was transparent, but it still stung. Because she was right. There were good people at Asterian. Sarah with her banana bread, Tom from IT, Jim the security guard. But then I remembered the recording of Patricia laughing about denying medical leave to a dying woman. Send the agreement, I repeated, and hung up. That night, I couldn't eat. Everything was balanced on a knife's edge. Take their offer and walk away with something, or risk everything for justice. Marcus made the decision for me with a simple question. If you take their money and stay quiet, how many more Jessicas will there be? How many more lives will they destroy? He was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. March 14th, one day before execution. The agreement from Asterian arrived. It was everything I'd asked for and more. 3 years' salary. Actually, Brett's resignation, a public apology, and a clause that would make me liable for $50 million in damages if I ever spoke about the company again. I sent back a single word. No. The die was cast. Tomorrow, everything would change. March 15th, 6:10 a.m. I watched from my kitchen window as the first domino fell. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking, SEC launches investigation into Asterian Dynamics over alleged financial fraud. Marcus had executed perfectly. The whistleblower complaint had been filed electronically at midnight, and by dawn, federal investigators were already pulling into Asterian's parking lot. I imagined the panic on the executive floor as they arrived for their early meetings to find government sedans in their reserved spots. By 7:30 a.m., the second wave hit. The Wall Street Journal's website led with tech firm Asterion Dynamics accused of massive accounting fraud ahead of IPO. The reporter had worked through the night, verifying the evidence, calling sources, building an airtight story. The details were damning, specific numbers, dates, and quotes from the recordings that left no room for denial. At 8:15 a.m., as Asterion employees were arriving for work, the Tribune published its exposé on the harassment and discrimination culture. Systematic age discrimination and sexual harassment alleged at Illinois tech giant. They'd even found other victims willing to go on record once they knew they weren't alone. The tech blogger released his piece at 9 a.m., targeting Asterion's customer base, Why Your Data Isn't Safe with Asterion Dynamics. He'd connected the dots between the executive misconduct and potential security vulnerabilities in their software. I sat at my computer, refreshing news sites obsessively, watching Asterion's stock price plummet in real time. 20% down by 10 a.m., 35% by noon. Trading was halted twice due to volatility. The phone calls started around 10:30 a.m. Former colleagues, journalists, even competitors wanting to know what I knew. I didn't answer any of them. The burner phone, however, rang once. Marcus. Phase 3 initiated. Board members have received their packages. By lunch, CNBC had picked up the story. I watched Brett's face appear on the screen under the headline, Asterion Executives Under Federal Investigation. He looked haggard, aged 10 years overnight. The reporter ambushed him in the parking garage. Mr. Harrison, do you have any comment on the allegations of securities fraud? No comment. He practically ran to his car. The CEO tried damage control with a hastily arranged press conference at 2 p.m. It was a disaster. He stuttered through prepared remarks about taking allegations seriously and full cooperation with authorities. Then a reporter asked about the specific numbers mentioned in the journal article, numbers only someone with inside access could know. Where did this information come from? The CEO demanded, forgetting he was on live television. This is corporate espionage. The reporters smelled blood. Are you suggesting the recordings are fake? Will you be resigning? What about the harassment allegations? He walked off the podium mid-question. The stock dropped another 15%. Patricia from HR sent out a company-wide email at 3 p.m. trying to calm employees, but it had the opposite effect. By 4 p.m., photos were circulating on social media of employees carrying boxes out of the building. The exodus had begun. Jennifer texted me from her burner. My former team is in full revolt. 3 people quit today. Management is in crisis meetings. The board acted faster than I'd expected. At 5:47 p.m., just after markets closed, Asterion released a statement. The board of directors has voted to place CEO Richard Blackstone and CFO Margaret Walsh on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. But the best moment came at 6:30 p.m. A local news crew had staked out Brett's house. I watched live as FBI agents carried boxes of documents to their van while Brett stood in his driveway in his gym clothes, looking utterly destroyed. The Chiron read, Asterion Executives Home raided in fraud investigation. My regular phone rang. It was Jim, the security guard who'd escorted me out. Jessica, I just wanted you to know. We're all talking about it. Everyone knows this is connected to what they did to you. And we're glad. They deserved this. I don't know what you're talking about, Jim. Right, of course. But Jessica? Thank you. By 10 p.m. Asterion scandal was trending nationally on Twitter. Former employees were sharing their own horror stories. Customers were demanding refunds. Partners were severing relationships. The Wall Street Journal updated their story with a devastating detail. The FBI had expanded their investigation to include RICO charges, Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the same law used to take down organized crime. I sat in my dark living room, watching the news coverage on mute. In 12 hours, the company that had discarded me like garbage was facing complete annihilation. Their stock had lost 60% of its value. Multiple federal investigations were underway. The executives who'd laughed about destroying lives were now facing potential prison time. But I felt no joy, no satisfaction, just a hollow exhaustion and the grim knowledge that justice, real justice, is never clean or satisfying. It's messy and painful and destroys everything it touches. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Check your bank account tomorrow. SEC whistleblower initial reward posted. It's substantial. I didn't care about the money. I cared that Patricia would never destroy another person's medical leave, that Brett would never coerce another intern, that Richard Blackstone would never defraud investors again. As midnight approached, marking the end of the Ides of March, I finally turned off the news. Tomorrow there would be more revelations, more fallout, more destruction. But tonight, for the first time in 6 weeks, I slept peacefully. March 20th, 5 days after the explosion. The call came at 3:05 a.m., unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Jessica. Clint Rawlings, the senior vice president who'd been notably absent from my termination meeting, the one executive whose voice hadn't appeared on any of my recordings. We need to meet. I have nothing to say to anyone from Mysterion. I'm not calling from Mysterion. I'm calling as someone who's about to lose everything because of your vendetta. Please. One meeting. I'll come alone, anywhere you choose. Something in his voice, desperation mixed with genuine fear, made me pause. Clint had always been different from the others. Old school, like me. Started from the bottom. Worked his way up over 30 years. Murphy's Diner, Route 47. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. When he saw me, he stood, a gesture of respect none of the others would have offered. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. You have 10 minutes. He pulled out an envelope, thick with cash. There's $100,000 here, untraceable. I didn't touch it. If you think it's not a bribe, it's a plea, take it and run. Leave the country if you have to, because what's coming next? Jessica, they're going to destroy you. They already did. No. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You destroyed a $5 billion company. You think they're just going to let that go? I've been in meetings with the board's crisis management team. They've hired Black River Consulting. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, like naming a terminal disease, sent chills down my spine. They're not lawyers, Jessica. They're fixers, character assassination specialists. By the time they're done, you'll be painted as a mentally unstable woman who fabricated evidence after a justified termination. They'll find every mistake you ever made, every enemy you ever had. They'll manufacture affairs, addiction problems, mental health crises. Your reputation won't just be damaged, it'll be erased. The recordings are real. The FBI has them. Doesn't matter. Public opinion matters more than truth. They'll flood social media with bots questioning your credibility. They'll plant stories about your history of workplace conflicts. They'll find people willing to lie for the right price. He pushed the envelope closer. Take the money. Disappear. You've won. Brett's been arrested. Richard's facing 20 years. The company's finished. Don't let them turn you into the villain. Why do you care what happens to me? He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone, showing me a photo of a young woman in a cap and gown. My daughter, Sarah. She works at Morrison Tech. Last week, she called me crying. Her boss had propositioned her, said she needed to be a team player if she wanted to advance. She was going to quit, give up her career rather than report it because she'd seen what happens to whistleblowers. His voice cracked. Then she saw what you did. one woman standing up to an entire corporation. She filed her complaint the next day. Others came forward. The bastard was fired within 48 hours. He met my eyes. You're a hero to people like her. But heroes don't usually survive the revenge. Please, take the money and run. And if I don't, then God help you, because they're coming. The private investigators are already digging through your past. They've contacted your ex-husband, your college roommates, anyone who might have dirt. They're checking your taxes going back 20 years, looking for any discrepancy. They've got forensic accountants examining every expense report you ever filed. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. We need to talk. Urgent. I have to go, I said, standing. Jessica. Wait. Clint grabbed my wrist gently. There's something else. Something not even the FBI knows yet. Richard and Margaret weren't just cooking books. They were selling company secrets to Chinese competitors. Industrial espionage. The FBI is about to expand their investigation to include national security issues. When that happens, everyone connected to this gets scrutinized, including you. I didn't know anything about, doesn't matter. You're now part of the biggest corporate scandal in Illinois history. Your life is about to become public property. Every reporter, every blogger, every conspiracy theorist will be digging into Jessica Marlowe. He released my wrist. Last chance. Take the money. I looked at the envelope, then at Clint's haggard face. Tell your daughter she's brave. Tell her it gets easier after the first time you say no. I walked out, leaving the money on the table. In my car. I called Marcus back. His voice was panicked. They found me. Black River. They offered me $2 million to turn on you. Say you fabricated everything. When I refused, they said they'd destroy my life. Jessica, these people, they're dangerous. Pack a bag. Get out of town for a while. What about you? I thought about Clint's warnings, the investigations, the character assassination machine spinning up to full speed. Then I thought about Clint's daughter. Finding courage in what I'd done. I'm staying right here. Let them come. Jessica, they want to fight. They've got one. The difference is, I've got nothing left to lose. And they've got everything. I hung up and drove home, knowing that the real war was just beginning. But for the first time since that morning in Conference Room B, I felt like myself again. Not a victim, not a statistic, a fighter. April 15th, 1 month after the detonation. The federal courthouse in Chicago was a fortress of limestone and justice. Its steps crowded with reporters as I arrived for the grand jury testimony. Black River had done their worst. Stories about my mental instability had circulated. My credit report had mysteriously developed errors, and someone had even called in a false police report to my address at 3 a.m. But they'd underestimated one thing. The truth has a way of surviving even the most vicious attacks. As I walked up those steps, something remarkable happened. People began applauding, former Asterion employees, other whistleblowers, ordinary citizens who'd been following the case. Someone shouted, "Thank you, Jessica." Another called out, "You gave us courage." Inside the courthouse, I spent 6 hours detailing everything. The prosecutors had built an airtight case from my recordings. 17 executives had been indicted. The company had filed for bankruptcy. The IPO was dead. $800 million in fraudulent value had been prevented from hitting the market. When I emerged, Brett was being led in through a side entrance in handcuffs. Our eyes met for a brief moment. He looked away first. 3 days later, the news broke that made everything worth it. Richard Blackstone and Margaret Walsh had pled guilty to federal securities fraud, accepting plea deals that included prison time and lifetime bans from serving as corporate officers. The industrial espionage charges Clint had warned me about resulted in additional arrests, including 2 board members who'd been selling secrets for years. Patricia Nguyen was arrested at her home on multiple counts of labor law violations and conspiracy. The image of her being led away in handcuffs, broadcast on every major network, became the defining photo of the scandal. The SEC whistleblower reward was more than I'd ever imagined, $4.7 million. my percentage of the penalties collected. I donated half to organizations supporting workplace discrimination victims. The other half would ensure I'd never have to beg for a job again. But the real victory came in the flood of messages from people I'd never met. A 60-year-old engineer in Detroit who'd filed an age discrimination complaint after seeing my story. A young woman in Seattle who'd reported harassment because, if Jessica could do it, so could I. An accountant in Miami who'd exposed fraud at his firm, citing the Asterion case as inspiration. Marcus emerged from hiding after the arrests. His name cleared and his reputation restored. He started a consulting firm helping whistleblowers protect themselves digitally. David used his newfound fame to launch a legal practice specifically defending corporate whistleblowers. Jennifer went back to school for her law degree, determined to fight from inside the system. Standing in my backyard on a warm April evening, I thought about the last 2 months. The company that had seemed invincible was gone. The executives who'd wielded power like weapons were facing justice. The culture of fear and exploitation they'd created had been exposed and dismantled. My phone rang. It was Jim, the security guard. "Jessica, I wanted you to know. A bunch of us former employees are starting our own company. Software development, but done right. Ethical, transparent. We want you on the board." "Jim, I don't know anything about running a tech company. You know about doing the right thing. That's what we need." I looked at the sunset, thinking about second chances, about rising from ashes, about the power of one voice refusing to be silenced. 3 months later, I stood in front of Congress, testifying about the need for stronger whistleblower protections. In the gallery sat Clint's daughter Sarah, now an advocate for workplace harassment victims. She smiled and gave me a thumbs up. "Senators," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. 22 years of loyalty earned me a 15-minute escort from the building. But those 15 minutes of humiliation gave me the courage to expose 22 years of corporate corruption. No employee should have to choose between their dignity and their livelihood. No company should be able to destroy lives with impunity. The Asterion Dynamics case became a Harvard Business School study in corporate ethics failure. The Marlowe recordings, as they became known, changed how companies approached workplace surveillance and employee relations. 3 states passed Jessica's Law, strengthening age discrimination protections. Brett Harrison served 18 months in federal prison. Upon release, he worked at a car wash, unable to find corporate employment. One day, he sent me a letter. "You were right. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. Richard Blackstone got 12 years. Margaret Walsh got 8. Patricia Nguyen got 5. The company that once employed 2,000 people was reduced to a cautionary tale told in business schools and compliance training sessions. As for me, I became something I never intended, a symbol. The woman who brought down a giant with nothing but a pen that wasn't really a pen and the courage to press play. Standing in my new office, CEO of Phoenix Technologies, the company built from Asterion's ashes by its former employees. I keep that silver recording pen on my desk. Not to use it, but as a reminder. A reminder that loyalty should flow both ways, that integrity matters more than income. That sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the most power. It's the one with nothing left to lose and the truth on their side. There was no glory in what happened, no roses or celebrations. The victory tasted like ash and sounded like silence. But it was justice. And after 22 years of being buried under corporate lies, justice was enough. The truth had set me free, even if freedom looked nothing like I'd imagined. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your experiences and perspectives make these stories come alive.